Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to my Week 13 college football predictions. Kind of a poopy week of football, not going to lie, for it being the second to last week of football. But next week, hopefully, things ramp up due to it being rivalry week, and it looks like that is the case. A lot of very good matchups. Um, a lot of really good matchups then. And yeah, super exciting. A lot of Friday matches. Very interesting there. Don't know why there's so many Friday matches, but yeah. So next week is definitely a big one. We've got a lot of games to go over in that. There's a lot of big rivalries there. But we're still on this week, which this week is not the prettiest thing ever. So a like and subscribe and help a comment always helps us get straight into this thing. So I decided, last video, which was like a week ago, like 2 weeks ago almost, I said I need to start doing all the games rather than just like glossing over one that I think is going to be an easy win. And it ends up not being the case. And I usually skip it because, you know, it doesn't look like it's going to be a loss whatsoever. And then it's like, well, you didn't predict it, so you don't look stupid, but you also didn't predict it because you thought the obvious team would win, but it doesn't count because you didn't predict it. So I was like, no, nada, no more. So Rutgers at Ohio State. Rutgers have not been the prettiest football team all season. They did play a competitive game against Iowa earlier in the year, but three of their 5 wins come from non-conference games. And their other 2 conference wins come against Maryland and Purdue, which is not impressive by any means. They got destroyed by Oregon, and Illinois got beat up pretty good by Washington. Barely lost to Minnesota, but Minnesota's not the prettiest thing ever either. They're 5-5 and like actually 5-5. They're actually 5-5. Traveling to Ohio State. Ohio State is obviously probably the best team in the nation. I do think Ohio State has a hard time just getting off to really good starts. Usually it takes them all 4 quarters to put teams away, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I just think that definitely will keep things close and keep Rutgers, powering forward. Usually a lot of these teams that end up winning 70-0 because they open up the first and second quarter with 21 points to 0, and it just kind of kills a team's morale, especially when they're so outmatched and they know it, that the second half is just a breeze. But sometimes, when going into halftime, the score is 7-0, and you're outmatched, but you're in this thing, it changes the way games are played. I think Ohio State has a hard time getting off to good starts, and they've done that quite a bit this season. A lot of games they have been very close going into halftime. The only non-example of this would maybe be UCLA, but again, that's UCLA. Like, even I would even throw in Purdue. Like, yeah, they were going into halftime up 24-3, but still against Purdue. I'll give that one to them also, though. I'll give that one to them. 24-3 is a pretty significant amount. But even like Penn State, obviously Penn State's a little underrated in the sense, but you're going into halftime 14-17. It's a close ball game, and you end up winning 38-14. Like, that's the team you are. That's the team we know you are. And it's just taken a while to get started. Ohio State, Illinois was 20-3, which I would even throw that one in there as a struggle because the fact of the matter is they were given points by insanely short fields because of Illinois' stupid mistakes. So I wouldn't even throw that one. I would throw that one in there because of that. Like, just the offensive aspect was not really moving. It was just being given the ball, and then Washington, Ohio State was 7-3 going into halftime, and Ohio State ends up winning 24-6. Even Ohio State kind of took a bit to get going. The score was 13-3 going into halftime. Took a while, and Ohio's not a good football team. Obviously, Texas, Ohio State was a struggle the whole time. So, like, the first half performances, for the most part, they take a bit. but they do have pretty significant weapons on this football team. There's no way in hell that Rutgers goes in here and wins this game. Do not get me wrong. I'm just going to give Rutgers some points because I feel like, they might just be in this thing for a bit longer because Ohio State is just letting them in. But that also could be not the case, and Ohio State could destroy. That's just kind of the gamble you take when you predict a matchup like this. Missouri at Oklahoma. Oklahoma is supposed to be number 8, by the way. I don't know how I missed that, but I got to apologize to Oklahoma, man. I was shit-talking this team through the wall. Like, Oklahoma, they got beaten up good by Texas. Then they lost to Ole Miss in their home stadium, and then they got spoon-fed a win against Tennessee by just horribly timed turnovers in awful places. But then they did it, man. They did the freaking impossible. The one thing I said that they wouldn't do in a million years. They went into Alabama and they won. And honestly, it's all because of defense. Nowhere in a million years is this team an offensive football team. Alabama was way in front in yards and by far the better football team. But 3 turnovers, one of which was a pick 6, and Oklahoma wins this thing by 2 points. And sometimes, one example against Tennessee where your defense gives you 13 points, it's like, okay, that's not going to happen every time. But it's another thing to go into Alabama and do it again. Oklahoma has a damn good defense. Probably one of the, if not the best defense in the country. They just destroy teams. Like, the only team that kind of just, didn't have a hard time really with Oklahoma's defense was Ole Miss. That was largely due to the fact that they coached a great game, 1, and 2, they didn't turn the ball over, and Oklahoma did. So Oklahoma's offense is still a question mark, and I feel like 8 is a great spot for Oklahoma right now. I don't think there's any question that Oklahoma should be in this tango. I mean, Oklahoma was literally in the driver's seat for the SEC. Like, they were up in the top with Texas A&M, and they should have been up there. Now they're down to what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're in 6th place in the conference. Unfortunately, they're stuck behind Texas because of that loss, and Alabama's still in front of them because Alabama is only a 1-loss team in the conference, even though their record is a 2-loss team. Texas has to play A&M later in the year at Texas. I mean, just watch out for that one because Texas A&M literally is little brother by a million years. Like, they just cannot seem to beat Texas for some reason in sports. But so still watch out for that one. But if A&M wins that, then Oklahoma would jump up. Alabama would have to lose to pretty much at Auburn. That's their only shot right there, is to lose at Auburn. And Ole Miss would have to lose at Mississippi State coming off of a bye. And then Georgia would have to lose. Never mind. It's not possible for Oklahoma to get into the SEC championship. Because Georgia's last 2 games are non-conference. They're against Charlotte and against Georgia Tech. So it looks like your SEC championship is, it's set in stone no matter what. It is going to be A&M versus Georgia. I don't think there is any scenario in which another team jumps in front of A&M and takes the championship. So I'm not really sure how that tiebreaker would work, but I'm not really sure how that would work, but maybe it's the PF. Ole Miss is PF. I'm not sure what that means, but theirs is higher than A&M, so maybe. But yeah, I think your SEC championship is locked up. So now it's just kind of down to the fact that Oklahoma, since they kind of played themselves out with their losses to teams they very well should have been beating. Not really Ole Miss. That one was expected, but definitely against Texas. You can't lose that one, especially with what Georgia just did to Texas. Don't want to lose that one. it's like now Oklahoma should just be one of those teams that gets into the 12-team tango, but they still have to get over this game and LSU, which TBH shouldn't be much of a problem in my opinion. Oklahoma's defense gets turnovers, and they get points off of turnovers. That's something that they've done very consistently all year. Now, the performances in which they lost were ironically performances in which that didn't happen. So that is something to be concerned about. But if you expect Missouri with a backup quarterback to go in here and play their most perfect football all year and somehow win this game, which on top of that, their perfect football compared to Oklahoma's perfect football is just two different breeds of football. I don't think there's any way Missouri goes into Oklahoma and wins, and I think they're just going to run into a brick wall of rejuvenated Oklahoma Sooners after their massive upset against Alabama. Miami at Virginia Tech. See, like a game like this, I would have glossed over. But to be honest, after further input, and it was one I was definitely looking at, Miami has kind of been finding their footing. Obviously, they lost to SMU in overtime off of a badly timed interception, and they lost by 3 points to Louisville in a game that Carson Beck threw, I think, 4 interceptions. So, yeah, I mean, their 2 losses are very close losses to pretty damn good teams. I mean, SMU, they're in conversation right now for the ACC championship. Like I said earlier in the season, if SMU can find a way to beat Clemson, they'd be in it, and then they somehow just drop one to Wake Forest. But they bounce back with a win against Miami, and now they get to play Louisville. So SMU is by no means a bad team in the ACC, and Louisville isn't either. Louisville is also a pretty good team. They're a 3-loss team in the conference, but that is a 1-point loss to Clemson. We all saw that. And then the overtime loss against Cal. Not very impressive losses. And then the other one's to Virginia. Very good team. They also have a road win against Pitt, who is pretty competitive in the ACC. So Louisville kind of fizzled out, but they were not the team that was supposed to beat Miami. They just got handed 4 turnovers, and whenever that happens, shit's going to get real fast. I really need to, reset my phone real quick. For some reason, when you leave the ESPN app open for a little too long, it just starts to destroy your phone. It's super weird. I can't even pull this bitch back up because it's so damn laggy. I don't know why it's like this, but it just is. So let me go ahead and pull this game back up. But like I was saying, Miami's 2 losses are very close losses to teams that were competitive in the ACC. And one of them wasn't even supposed to be a loss. Let's not forget, Miami beat Notre Dame. Miami killed South Florida, which was actually a pretty damn good team. And they beat the crap out of Florida, who has been a very competitive team in the SEC. Virginia Tech, on the other hand, has also kind of been a sleeper 3-7 football team. Kind of like the Atlanta Falcons, they've been playing super competitive against some of the top dogs. They just can't finish. Now, the loss against South Carolina doesn't look pretty. Loss against Vanderbilt does not look pretty. And more importantly, loss against Old Dominion does not look pretty. But they do have a win against North Carolina State, but a 7-point loss against Wake Forest. Wake Forest has much improved since last season. Their game against Georgia Tech wasn't very pretty, but a double overtime win against Cal. Cal has been a constant problem for ranked teams in the ACC. A game against Louisville that was tight until the very end. A game in which Virginia Tech was up 16-7 in. They just couldn't figure it out in the second half of football and let Louisville take one away from them. And then most recently, not a very impressive performance against Florida State. But that's what Florida State does really good is they make explosive plays happen and win by a lot when they're playing like an explosive football team. So if you could gander what I'm trying to say from that is Virginia Tech has been seemingly competitive at times. Other times they've kind of let things slip away from them. They can go on super hot streaks and then they can go ice cold. And Miami's traveling in here after 2 impressive wins, not against good teams, but just dominations. There's nothing wrong with a domination from a team like Miami who needs it. But I feel like, especially with the game last year and how these two played each other, I think this one is lining up to be a pretty good matchup. I think it's going to be a lot closer than people would like it to be. I'm still going to take Miami. because Virginia Tech just hasn't been able to get their big win. They play in some competitive games, but they just can't win them. So I'm going to take Miami, but expect this one to be close. Expect some turnovers, too, from Miami. USC at Oregon. This is our game of the week. Former Pac-12 matchup. I could cry right now. It's going to be a good one. You know, these teams always duke it out when they play each other, especially when they're ranked. Even when they're not ranked, sometimes they duke it out. But USC, you know, they've very impressive football team. Super underrated football team. You know, they go into Iowa, or they play Iowa, and Iowa was playing very good in this game. Iowa was actually looking like they were going to win this game, and they got up 21-7 before USC just kind of took the game away from them. And you know, that's pretty impressive. You know, Iowa has played teams very good, and Iowa almost beat Oregon. So by all means, you look at it and you should say, oh, well, USC should win this one. Well, the thing is this is at Oregon, and road games do matter. USC's overall schedule in the Big Ten has been pretty good. They've dominated where they're supposed to dominate. They lost the game against Illinois because of horrible time management. Yes, come out of the 2-minute timeout inside the red zone of Illinois. Let's just go for a touchdown shot and catch it and let Illinois have 2 minutes to go down the field and try and kick a field goal. Let's not try to make it a little difficult for them. They gave them that one off of horrible coaching. But then USC bounced back with a dominating win over Michigan. Then they lined up to play Notre Dame, a game in which I thought they would win, but they just turned the ball over too much and failed on fourth down. They were literally in this game, and they kind of gave it away to Notre Dame. Bounced back with a road win against a fairly competitive Nebraska team. And a Nebraska team that's 7-3 right now. Kick the crap out of Northwestern, and then bounce back with your first ranked win, second ranked win of the season, but your first ranked win in a while against the Iowa Hawkeyes. And now you're ranked at number 15, and you're lining up for a big matchup against Oregon. And Oregon, quite frankly, needs this. They desperately need this because now their win over Iowa, they're not ranked anymore. The only ranked team, they haven't beaten a ranked team. That's the thing. Oregon hasn't beaten a currently ranked team yet this season, and their loss was to Indiana. And a game that I personally think Indiana was absolutely dominant in. You know, it was a close competitive game, I would say, due to home field advantage. And, you know, the vibes were different, but Indiana literally gave Oregon a pick six. They just gave them a pick six to keep things competitive. And yet they still ripped off 10 points unanswered and shut Oregon down for the rest of the game. So me personally, I feel like there's a skill gap between Indiana, Ohio State, and Oregon. I feel like there's a big skill gap. And USC could very well hit them with that skill gap. Now, if Oregon wins this football game, they're college football playoff bound. Congratulations. If Oregon loses this football game, I personally think they're out. I think they're out of the college football playoff. Because you would lose to two ranked teams. And you haven't beaten a ranked team. You've played nobody. There's better options out there. And yeah, you're a 2-loss football team, but you also have to play Washington at the end of the year, so good luck. Washington loves to play really good in that matchup throughout history. And, yeah, I mean, if Oregon loses this, they would have 2 losses. They'd be underneath USC. USC could potentially be the team instead of Oregon, and that would change things a lot. So who do I pick to win this game? I think USC would really be my pick, but it is at Oregon, and Oregon has won this matchup at their home stadium for a while, and this is a former Pac-12 matchup, and it's just going to be vibes. Like, it's going to be a really fun matchup, I think. But give me Oregon. I really want to pick USC in this one to go on the road and shock the world, but just give me Oregon. You know, they have been a really good football team, and they have been very competitive. The win against Iowa is impressive in my eyes due to the fact that it was on the road, and the Hawkeyes Stadium could get crazy. But give me Oregon to win this one in a very close game, but give me Oregon. Syracuse at Notre Dame. See, we got to throw this one in now because if I didn't, I'm sure Syracuse would find a way to win. But now that I'm throwing it in, I'm sure they'll lose 3-59. Syracuse has been very interesting. They have an overtime win against UConn, which actually looks like pretty good right now due to the fact that UConn is 8-3, getting ready to go 9-3. And UConn beat Duke. They also played in an offensive matchup against Tennessee. By all means, was competitive. And then they beat Clemson on the road, but then shit really started to fall apart for Syracuse, and I couldn't tell you why. They got destroyed in their home stadium by Duke, 38-3, which probably is due to the fact that maybe their starting quarterback is hurt. I haven't seen. Yeah, it looks like Stephen Jelly was not playing in that Duke game. Maybe he's cooked for the rest of the year. I would assume that is the case. I haven't seen Stephen Jelly's name in a while. Oh, geez. And now we're on to Jay Filardi, Joseph Filardi, freshman from New York. So, yeah, they're in quarterback problems is what it looks like right now. Definite quarterback problems. And I don't know if Stephen Jelly's going to come back. Stephen Jelly is still the leading passer of the team, and he hasn't been playing. But oh no, he tore his Achilles. He's done. So yeah, if Stephen Jelly was playing, I'm sure Syracuse's season would have gone a lot differently. But since that's the case, Syracuse has not been competitive with this backup quarterback or with the backup quarterback. So I don't really think there's any world in which Notre Dame loses this game. Kentucky at Vanderbilt. Man, I was looking at this one, and it's like, bring me back to the days when Kentucky was a ranked football team. Like, I frick with Vanderbilt being ranked, but I really, really liked it when Kentucky was a ranked football team. Remember when they were up in like almost the top 10 or maybe even, I feel like they got up to number 8 that season. Actually, I can check because ESPN is cool. What year was this? Was this 2022? Was it 2022 when Kentucky was a good ass football team, or was it a different year? God damn, you look at, holy shit. You look at the top 25 of 2022, things were different, man. Tulane was number 9. What in the world? But let's go ahead and try like week 9. Yeah, Kentucky was ranked at in week 9. Let's see how long they lasted for, though. No, they took a loss. So it must have been the year before. It must have been 2021 in which they were a highly ranked team. Whoa, why was Oregon so highly ranked in 2021? I'm sorry, I'm getting a little distracted right now, and I'm sure it's probably boring, but I'm having fun. I want to see when Kentucky was ranked highly. Or maybe it was 2023 that they were good. Goodness gracious, what was going on in 2021, man? Cincinnati, number 4, 11-0. Jesus Christ, bro. This top 25 is whack-a-mole. It is complete whack-a-mole. It doesn't look like 2021 was the year, so we'll try 2023. Was that the year that Kentucky was super highly ranked? I remember there was a time where Kentucky was a very highly ranked team. I don't remember what year it was, though. And I think it was when they had Will Levis that they were doing pretty good. Well, there's Kentucky in week 8 of 2023, but then they drop out because they obviously probably lost. Let's try 2022 again. Maybe I was looking in the wrong weeks. Wow, Syracuse was number 14 in 2022. Go figure. It looks like Kentucky was like on the rise. Let's try week 5. Maybe it was earlier on for Kentucky. I know there was a week at some point in time where Kentucky was super high. Here it is. 2022, week 3. Kentucky skyrocketed 11 spots to go up to number 9. Wow, listen to this top 25. For the first 4, it's like pretty normal, for 2022. Georgia, number 1. Alabama, number 2. Ohio State, number 3. Michigan, number 4. Clemson, number 5. Oklahoma, number 6. USC, number 7. Oklahoma State, number 8. Kentucky, number 9. Arkansas, number 10. Michigan State, number 11. BYU, number 12. Wow, this top 25 is crazy. I don't even have words, man. It feels like it was just so much better back then, in my opinion, man. Like, the teams that are ranked now, it's just all the good teams. Like, that was when the teams were just like, they had passion, man. The teams had passion. All right, whatever. Kentucky at Vanderbilt. Kentucky, sorry for that little debriefing, but Kentucky has been interesting to say the least. Vanderbilt, consistent. They've been super consistent, winning games against teams they should. A 3-point loss against Texas in a game Texas was kind of dominant in, and a loss against Alabama. They have had the easier slump of the top 25 schedule in the SEC. But Kentucky is coming off of some heaters right now. They absolutely destroyed Florida, which should speak numbers to everybody. And they just kicked the crap out of Tennessee Tech. Huge win there. But I think Vanderbilt, in their home stadium with a lot of momentum, this is a game they should be expecting to win. But Kentucky has played very competitive in certain games. They also haven't at some points. But I think it will be competitive. I think Vanderbilt's going to win, but this one will be a battle for a while. So give me Vanderbilt, but in a close one. Arkansas at Texas. Needeth I say more? Arkansas has been the they're 2-8, and they've lost so many games by one possession this year. A lot of very, very close games. The only outlier in that was against Notre Dame, which, of course, Notre Dame would take advantage of a very low-record team and destroy them. But Texas, coming off of a domination against Georgia, spirits are crushed. College football playoff implications are gone. The season has collapsed, and maybe the time of Texas is over. They were in the college football playoff twice, and they just couldn't quite put things together. They just couldn't figure it out. The two teams they've beaten in the college football playoff were Clemson and ASU. And they shouldn't have even beaten ASU in that game, but they did. And then they lose to Ohio State. So, honestly, Steve Sarkisian should be getting the James Franklin treatment, in my opinion. But, this is a game, Arkansas. They've been playing great in games this year. Sometimes they just let one go by. But they've been playing great, and they just can't finish games, unfortunately. Seriously, if they could have found a way to beat Memphis and then found a way to beat Ole Miss, this Arkansas team could be one of the highest-ranked teams in the country right now. But instead, they just couldn't find a way to close out games. The Memphis and Ole Miss games, they were driving in enemy territory, getting ready to score, and they fumbled the freaking ball away to the opposing team, and they lost those two games. Those could have been gigantor upsets, but instead, they aren't, and that could have caused some real crazy shit to happen. So give me Texas, but in a very high-scoring close game. Kansas State at Utah. Kansas State's very up and down. Utah's very consistent. Utah is a very good running football team. They also have a pretty solid defense, but good luck stopping this team on the floor. But Kansas State has been pretty good in particular games, just random games. It all kind of just depends on how Avery Johnson wants to play. And this seems like the type of game where Avery Johnson would want to play good. I'm not going to give him the win, but expect a closer one here. The first close game for Utah in a while. Maryland at Michigan. Maryland hasn't been very good this year. Michigan also hasn't been very good this year. Michigan barely beat Northwestern. The fact that Michigan is a 2-loss football team is diabolical. Michigan barely beat Michigan State, barely beat Purdue, and barely beat Northwestern. They're holding on by a freaking thread. And, I'm sorry. I wrote it wrong. It's at Maryland. Same score. Whatever. It's at Maryland, though. That's a big oopsie by me. Sorry. TCU at Houston. Houston is fraudulent, all right? Listen, Houston's win over ASU is absolute bullshit. If anybody watched that game, Houston was getting absolutely fed a win by the refs. It was absolute bullshit. I know I'm biased. I know I like ASU, but I also can tell when a penalty is real or not. And half of the penalties that were being released from the ref's pocket were absolute, complete, and utter bullshit. And then, of course, Levitt got hurt in this game, so Sims had to be thrown into a clutch scenario. And we just couldn't quite get it done. And then even the targeting at the end of the game, that wasn't fucking called. Because why would anybody want to call targeting against ASU? Whatever. Houston is a 2-loss football team with 2 losses, an absolute domination by Texas Tech, and a loss to West Virginia in Houston's home stadium. They've been scraping by all season. They barely managed to beat U of A. They absolutely fuckballed their way through ASU. They won in overtime against Oregon State, who is god-awful, and they won by 3 points against UCF, who is god-awful. They're not supposed to be 8-2. They're not supposed to be ranked. And I do think they have a pretty good defense, but offensively, no. I think TCU is going to pick up a win here. And if it's not TCU, then it's going to be at Baylor at the end of the year. So give me TCU here. If not, then give me Baylor later. I don't think Houston's going to last at this rate. Pitt at Georgia Tech. Expect a high-scoring shootout here. Georgia Tech, dude, I'm just telling you. They did this when they played, I think it was last year, right? Was it last year? They did this last year. Not a very good football team. Not very impressive. But they went into Georgia, and they nearly took them down in like 18 overtimes. That wasn't a very good Georgia Tech team. This is a 9-1 Georgia Tech team. Yeah, this Georgia team is a lot better than last year's. But still, I don't think Georgia Tech has any easy path to winning all their football games right now, especially with the loss against NC State, and then barely beating a horrible Boston College team by 2 points. They've got to pull this one out. And I think they will, and then watch out for that Georgia Tech-Georgia game. Tennessee at Florida. I haven't been a Tennessee fan all season. I did originally start off liking Tennessee, and then it was just crazy that Georgia managed to win that football game, a game they shouldn't be winning. That looks super impressive for Tennessee, but they don't have a defense at all, and they get a lot of points scored on them, and they've kind of just had many games where they've just thrown their shit away. They also got destroyed by Alabama. They got gifted a win against Mississippi State, a win that they shouldn't be winning. And they just haven't really looked like defensively sound all year. They've barely beat Arkansas as well, which that was kind of a trend for Arkansas, but still. Tennessee at Florida. Florida got destroyed. They got destroyed by Kentucky, and they almost bounced back and beat Ole Miss. And you best believe in the Swamp, I don't care if they're 3-7. The fans are going to show up for this game. And I think Florida's going to pick up another SEC win here against a big-time matchup. I think they're going to take down the Volunteers. Illinois at Wisconsin. Give me Illinois by a score. BYU at Cincinnati. Let's actually sit and talk about this one. I think that Cincinnati's going to win this football game in a high-scoring one. Yes, BYU has a really good defense, and that was pretty impressive in the Texas Tech game. The fact that their defense just kept on managing to stop Texas Tech and hold them to field goals throughout the whole game while their offense did virtually nothing. Cincinnati's defense is not impressive, but their offense is. And if there's anything I learned about that game against Utah, it's that they lost it themselves. They lost it themselves. That's all there is to it. They lost, Cincinnati lost like 45-14 on College game day with the spotlight on them. Cincinnati turned the ball over 3 times. They had 60 yards of penalties, yet they're only down by 60 yards in the overall yard category compared to Utah, and they're losing 45-14. If that alone doesn't tell you that they beat themselves down, I don't know what will, especially a missed field goal to open up the second quarter and a fumble, which leads to more Utah points. I mean, and it's literally just like they beat themselves down. They gave Utah free points, and they took points away from themselves, and they just couldn't capitalize. They were just not playing their perfect football. And there is perfect football in Cincinnati. And especially since that was at Utah, now you're returning home to play BYU, who also probably should have lost to Utah. Utah, I would say, is a better football team than BYU. I'm going to take Cincinnati to win this football game. I'm going to take them to win it. And ASU at Colorado. I am so not confident right now in picking ASU in this one. I really think Colorado might beat us. Just because this is history, like ASU does not play good second to last game of the year on the road against a shitty Colorado team or a shitty Oregon State team. Like, we just don't. We always blow it, especially since it's going to be dick balls cold. And yeah, I'm really worried about this one. I have no confidence whatsoever saying that ASU wins this game. And the only reason I'm saying it is because Jordan Tyson is back. That's it. ASU's offense has been, they've been managing against bad football teams with Jeff Sims. It's been a super big surprise to most people. This just seems like a game ASU would drop. I'm not confident in this one at all, but hopefully they do win. But with that being said, a like and subscribe, and help, a comment always helps. That's all for me. Adios.